So I've been running my marketing agency for 3 years now, and I can say hands down, the hardest part about running an agency is client retention. And the reason clients don't stay on is not actually just because they might get bad results, but it might be because they had bad expectation set up in the sales call or in the onboarding process or in the agreement that you give them. And that's why we're talking today about SMMA or marketing agency agreements, because this is the written legal, hey, this is what we're agreeing to. And if you get this right, your retention will increase, I promise. And the changes I've recently made to my agreement in the last 8 or 9 months have made a big difference, peace of mind wise for me, and also for setting proper expectations with clients and helping them have success. But instead of just giving you a copy of my agreement and saying, hey, this is what it is, I really want to dive as deep as we can today, talk about the principles so that you understand how to set one up for yourself. And then I'll show you examples of what I've used in the past and what I'm using now and how you guys can set up your own. None of what I'm sharing today is legal advice, just experiences that I've had, and it's for entertainment purposes only, as they say. So without further ado, let's get into the last video you'll ever need to watch about SMMA contracts. So here's the thing, contracts are important, but not for the reason you think. Most beginners are worried about like a lawsuit or protecting, their business and their business assets and all this stuff. And I can just tell you that like the numbers you're dealing with are so small that the likelihood of a lawsuit or legal action or anything from a client is so slim. That's not what your agreement is for, especially at the beginning. And in addition to that, there's a lot of beginners that use not having an agreement or not having a contract as an excuse not to start their agency. And that's not what you should do at all. In fact, the first like 3 to 5 clients that I signed, I didn't even have an agreement that I sent to them. And that's what you should do as well. That's what I recommend to most of my students is, hey, like just get started. Get those first few clients, make the mistakes, and then you'll know enough to actually write up a good contract that you can use in the future. So there's 2 main things that an agreement does for you as an agency owner. First, it sets up your client relationships to go smoothly. The expectations are set up the correct way, as I mentioned earlier. And also it protects you in the case of chargebacks or other legal action, which is very unlikely, as I mentioned, but chargebacks are probably more likely. And if you have a good agreement and you provided the services to the client and the client submits a chargeback to their credit card company, you can submit the agreement and say, hey, this is what the agreement says. This is what was provided to the client, and you can keep that money. Typically, I've seen banks side with the company that has a good agreement a lot more than the consumer who's just upset with something that happened during the process. So in short, it gives you leverage if the client doesn't do what they're supposed to do, and it gives the client leverage if you don't do what you're supposed to do. But obviously, everyone watching this video is going to give their clients the best experience possible, and so they'll never really need their client to have leverage over them. So this begs the question, how do we set this up correctly? Again, there's 2 things that we need to consider. 1, what are the agency's requirements? What is the agency promising to do? And 2, what are the client requirements? What is the client promising to do? So that is the meat of the agreement. And then there's also some fine print we can add in, guarantees, things like that, time frames, all of that's very important. And we'll discuss it as well. But first, let's talk about this meat idea of actually just creating the contract of showing what we need to do and what the client needs to do. So right now, I want you to take a piece of paper. I've got like some slides that kind of do this, but take a piece of paper and follow along and write on one side agency and the other side client. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and you can see here, I've got the agency on one side and the client on one side. And the first step that you need to do for your contract is just outline basically what it is that the agency is doing, and then outline what the client is doing. So the agency is going to run Facebook ads. That's what we'll put here. And the client has 3 requirements. 1, provide Facebook access. 2, provide photos for the ads to run on Facebook. And 3, follow up with Facebook leads. If you run a website agency or Google Ads agency, obviously you just substitute for whatever you need from the client for that specific service. Now this is okay, but we need to be a lot more specific if we're going to set ourselves up for as much success as possible. Let's say we add to the client requirements some specifics. So we need admin access to the Facebook page, not just access to the Facebook page. And we also need a minimum of 10 photos for ads according to the agency's guidelines for those photos. So the photos can't just be like a picture of the wall. They've got to be a picture of, the doctor with a patient if you're doing something in medical, or it's got to be a picture of your best, car conversion if you're running ads for somebody that, converts cars or something like that. And then lastly, call all Facebook leads when they come in. Pretty good. All right, so this isn't bad. This is better than what we had, but it's still not quite there. So now we need to put some more stuff in for the agency, not because, we actually need to, but because it makes us look more impressive to the client when they look through the contract. So the agency's not going to just run Facebook ads now. They're going to do Facebook ad copywriting and strategy, landing page creation and customization, initial Facebook ad campaign setup and launch, and weekly campaign reporting. Look at that. That's really good. That makes us look super impressive on the contract. But we can still add more to this. What about timeframes, especially on the client side? How about providing admin access to the Facebook page within 48 hours of signing the agreement? And how about providing those 10 photos within 5 business days? And how about calling all Facebook leads when they come in within 24 business hours of when the lead was generated? So this, when they come in, that was an accident. I'll take myself off the screen so you can see that whole thing. Pretty cool, right? Once we add more specifics for the client and timeframes, we've got ourselves a pretty good looking set of requirements that we can tell to a client. And they're gonna be like, wow, this person really knows what they're doing. And it's all because we just put a few deadlines on things. And then it also, gives you some leverage over the client. Be like, hey, you signed this thing. Go ahead and, give me the stuff within this time frame. And they're like, okay, before I sign, I should make sure that I can actually do this. And then you actually are able to launch the campaigns a lot faster. All right, now let's talk about guarantees. There has been a lot of talk about guarantees, a lot of people trying it out, especially since Alex Hormozi's book, $100 Million Offers, where he talks about guarantees a lot. So there are 4 different types of guarantees that we can use for our agency services. There's what's called an unconditional guarantee. So this would be something like, if you're unhappy for any reason, we'll refund you every penny. Then there's a conditional guarantee, which is something like, okay, you have to get us, admin access to Facebook page within 48 hours, provide a minimum of 10 photos, and call all the Facebook leads within 24 hours in order to qualify for the guarantee, which is that we'll refund you every penny. But if you fall down on one or any of those, then you don't qualify. Then we've got the anti-guarantee, which is basically explicitly stating that you don't have a guarantee. And then an implied guarantee, which is sort of like a partnership or a joint venture where if you don't make money, I don't make money, therefore all of our interests are aligned. The one that I'm going to focus on today, because it's what I use and what I think most of you should use, is a conditional guarantee. Anti-guarantee can also work. This is what I use for the first 1.5 years of my agency. And then an implied guarantee, this would be something like, hey, you pay me $500 to $1,000 a month, and then I get a percentage of ROAS for an e-commerce store or an info product or something like that. Those are really cool arrangements that you can put together. Guarantees aren't for everyone, but they can do a really good job of helping you risk reverse so you can sell more. And then they also encourage client compliance, which we'll talk about in just a second. But today we're talking about conditional guarantees on agreements. So conditional or action-based guarantees have 2 things that we need to understand about them. One is that the client must complete their requirements to qualify, or else why the heck do you have a guarantee? And then 2, it encourages compliance from the client. This is the most important part, and this is why I love conditional guarantees, because it lights a fire under the client's butt to actually get stuff done, which they wouldn't do otherwise if you hadn't set that expectation. And one thing I should mention about this encourages compliance thing, if you get like a level 2 client out of 10 on board, you're not gonna bring them all the way to a 10 just through a fancy guarantee. But if you get a level 5 client and you give them a good guarantee and a good set of expectations, you can easily bring them to an 8 or a 9 level client, meaning they're that level of good to work with and they get that level of results through having an action-based guarantee and getting them to take action. All right, so now let's break this down even further. There's 2 parts of our guarantee. 1, what level of results or lack of results would allow someone to qualify for the guarantee, and 2, what is it that they're going to get once they qualify? So there's three options really in the agency space for, the trigger that activates the guarantee. So number one would be an ROI guarantee, which I'll give an example of. Number two would be a break-even guarantee. And then number three would be an appointment or lead number guarantee, which I would say this one at the bottom is probably the most common. And then there's three things you can promise somebody. You can say money back plus a check or an amount of money. You can just give their money back, or you can give free services to that person. And kind of a caveat here with the money back, you don't have to give everyone all of their money back. Let's say you charge them $6,000 for their first 3 months, $2,000 a month, and they make $5,000 from your agency services. You could set it up to where you only have to refund them $1,000 instead of the whole $6,000. Awesome, so now let's look at some examples. If you don't make at least a 2x ROI in revenue over 90 days, we will refund you every penny. That's an ROI guarantee with a complete refund. Second one, if this program does not produce at least the billed amount in production over 90 days, we will run our program for free until it does. So that's the free services with the break-even guarantee. And then the last one, 70 new customer opportunities in your first month or your money back plus a $1,000 check. So this is your money back plus check, and they're promising a number of leads or new patient opportunities or new customer opportunities in this case in order to qualify for that, which they pretty much always know that they're going to get. So let's take a look at how the language of this might be expressed inside of your agreement. So that we've got the client requirements listed here. And then on the left, we've got the language of this. So action-based guarantee. If this program does not produce at least the billed amount in production over 90 days, we'll run our program for free until it does. Production is sort of like an industry specific term for revenue. So I'd probably replace that with revenue if you're not in the dental space. Note, completion of all items on this agreement is mandatory for all clients. So it's mandatory anyway. But agency name reserves the right to delay your campaign launch until all items are completed. Lastly, clients forfeit their right to the action-based guarantee if all items are not completed within their specified time frame. That's how it should look on your agreement. It's a really good wording. It really sets the precedent. You're capitalizing things. You're like, look, this is mandatory. We have the right to delay your campaign launch if you don't get this done, and you forfeit your right to the ROI guarantee. And when people read this, again, they take you a lot more seriously. So I know a lot of you are thinking right now, but won't a guarantee make people take advantage of me? And the answer is yes and no, but mostly no. There are some pros and cons to guarantees, and I've actually thought about this quite a bit recently, but I sort of think that everybody should have a guarantee or a risk reversal of some kind because it's going to make it way easier to sell things. And then you also kind of just have to do the math. Like if you get a net increase in customers because you sell more people on, even if you have to make good on your guarantee sometimes, you're still making more money than you would have without the guarantee. So let's look at this slide. Guarantee pros versus guarantee cons. The pros are it's going to be a lot easier to sell. You're going to be able to encourage compliance with a conditional guarantee. And then lastly, it's going to make you extremely competitive in the market. The biggest players in your specific niche probably have some sort of risk reversal. So if you don't, you're eventually going to have to do something like that to be able to get to their level. Maybe not, but likely. And lastly, guarantee cons. So sometimes you have to give refunds or you have to do free work for people. Secondly, it can attract people who just don't take responsibility. They're like, oh, I get my money back if it doesn't work. And then they sign up and then they don't do anything. And then it doesn't work. And they're like, oh, I just got my money back. Like you attract those kind of people, especially if you don't do a conditional guarantee. So definitely don't do an unconditional one, because I had a couple refunds that I've given where I'm just like, you make me sick. Like, why did you sign up for this? You don't even care. Like you weren't even trying to grow your business. And people like that exist out there. I know that might sound weird, but it's true. Third, difficult for beginners to execute correctly. This is what I'm talking about. Like everybody sort of starts out with this idea that, oh, I'm just going to offer satisfaction guarantee. And there's other guarantee things that they might try to put in there, but they're likely not going to execute it correctly. I feel like I'm barely figuring out how to execute it correctly. And we've had a guarantee for like, I don't know, 2 years almost. And I think it's even hard for like advanced people to execute this correctly. So just embrace the fact that you're gonna make some mistakes. So I had a friend that implemented a guarantee just because of what Hormozy was saying, and he didn't really know what he was doing. And then he ended up having to give like 1/4 of his monthly revenue back in refunds in 1 month. And it was just a nightmare for them. And then lastly, anxiety. When you have a guarantee, like you just have more anxiety because people can make good on that guarantee. So let's talk about some guidelines so that you can have success with a guarantee when you launch your company. Number one, only guarantee what you can control. So leads and appointments, not ROI. This one's really important, especially if the client is calling the leads. I just had a client last week, called one of my staff members. They had a monthly call and he was like, look, I got 6 people scheduled and one of them showed up and didn't start treatment and 5 of them no-showed. And this particular client barely communicates with the leads to schedule them. And so they don't remember their appointments and therefore they no-show their appointments. Like, it's not like he's getting on the phone, he's just texting them back and forth. So in that case, what I was coaching my team on is, look, we have a certain locus of control, which is the leads that we generate. They're in charge of scheduling the appointments and making sure those appointments show up. We can help them with that, with automated text reminders, making sure that they're actually calling the leads, recommending best practices. But the only thing we actually do is generate the leads. And even that, we're reliant upon the client for photos and things like that. But we've got enough tricks up our sleeve that we're pretty confident we can generate enough qualified leads to appointments every single month. But while I was making this presentation, I was like, you know what? We should probably switch our guarantee to just be an appointments thing, because right now it's a break-even one, and that's actually reliant on the client closing the leads when they might not close them. They might have a really bad system for it. They might have, bad Google reviews, and so somebody comes in and the Google reviews are bad and then they decide not to buy from them. Like, that's not in my control. What is in my control, because we have leads coming in and then we have appointment setting team scheduling those leads on somebody's calendar, is the appointments that we schedule for the client. So as long as they follow this set of guidelines, we can guarantee this many appointments. That also makes it more tangible for the client, which is very good. Secondly, make sure that you use your guarantee as a tool to push a hesitant client over the edge, or kind of the icing on the cake for somebody who's already ready to buy, instead of the backbone of your pitch. You can't be like, everything is backed on the guarantee, blah, 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 because then the person backs off and they're like, oh, I don't have to do anything. And they absolve all responsibility and you have to do everything for them. And they're still upset, when they didn't take the action they were supposed to, because they felt like you were going to do everything because it's guaranteed. And then thirdly, as I mentioned before, a net increase in new clients, so new clients minus the amount of refunds, is a positive outcome for a guarantee. So even if you have to refund some people, if you're selling more than you're refunding because of the guarantee, then that's a positive business outcome for you. And then fourth, don't be surprised if you get some crazy people, because it can attract a lot of insane people who, for one reason or another, just don't actually want to accept the risks that come with business. All right, so now let's talk about the fine print. These are little hacks that you can kind of put in to make sure that you're covered as the agency in case of a chargeback or legal action, and they also really help you increase revenue when someone does need to cancel. So for example, you might add something like, client must use agency name Facebook ad account to qualify for the guarantee, because you don't want to deal with some old ad account that has a really bad reputation with Facebook or TikTok or something like that. You want to use your own so that you're guaranteed that it has a good reputation with the platform. Second, payment will be billed every blank days from start date. You can put whatever you want there so that you bill the right amount. Next, an initial, blank week campaign. We do initial 12-week campaign. Most people, I would say, start out with 12 weeks. You could try to do a 6-month contract. You could try to do a 12-month contract, but 3 months is pretty standard for the industry. It's enough time for you to get results and to get assets from the clients and, kind of play around with things if it's not actually working. Next up on fine print would be outlining whether your agreement is month to month after the initial campaign. So you could say agreement is month to month with a blank day notice. So 14-day, 30-day. Campaigns renew and bill automatically without a 30-day notice, for example. And then lastly, I understand that upon entering this agreement, agency name will immediately begin working on my account. Therefore, no refunds will be issued. This is sort of the anti-guarantee thing, or the working for free thing. You can put this in so that people aren't expecting a refund when the campaign doesn't go how they wanted it to. Alrighty, folks, great work. We're through the slides. Now let's look at a few examples of agreements that I've used in the past and the pros and cons of those agreements. Again, none of this is legal advice. The legal parts of this, I literally know nothing about, but we'll kind of walk through it so that you can see what it looks like. So this is our old logo here. You can see agency services agreement. Thank you for choosing us. This agreement is entered into on this date with this company. And then for this specific client, we're selling them a website. And so you can see Number one, the services. And then you can see specifically what the company is providing for the client. Also, for ongoing management, this is what we're doing. Number two, client requirements. This is what they're required to give us. Compensation and payment, setup fee, $2,000, ongoing management. Then we have the term, the termination, exclusivity, proprietary information and use of materials. This is like, hey, this is our intellectual property. You can't share it with other people. License, client grants the company a limited, non-transferable, non-exclusive license to copy, store, set up, publicly display, publicly perform, and transmit any trade names, trademarks, blah, blah, blah. You can pause and read that whole thing. Portfolio release, just stating that you can use their information, like if you get a good result with a client, that you can put that on your website or in your marketing. Additional services, this is really good to put in. Super good clause, because if somebody's requesting something out of what you promised to do, you could say, cool, no problem. We'll build that at $100 an hour, or $200 an hour, or whatever. Limitation of liability, handling of disputes, no guarantee, entire agreement, severability, headings, interpretation, enforcement. These are all like legal things you can pause and look at. And then the company here, and then you send it to the client for them to sign. You can see this one. This is what's happening. It's between ortho patients, the agency, and the client. This is some legal stuff to protect you. General acquiescence, like here's the terms of service, blah, 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 scope of work. This is what we're doing. This is what bonus options, if applicable. This is what the client is promising to give us. Assets requested may include. Here are the fees. No guarantees provided. Refund cancellation stipulation. Use of content. Geographic exclusivity. You might choose to put this in, you might not. Honestly, I have found that people doesn't really help you sell, like being in the agreement. Some people might really want it there and you can just add it for those people. But I've found like 7 to 10 miles is super big. So I would go like 5 miles and see what somebody thinks. Like most people aren't gonna blink an eye at that. We've just removed it completely, and if there's somebody close to somebody else, we're just like, hey, we've got somebody in this city, is that a problem? They're usually like, no, so that's fine. Payment scheme, non-disclosure, miscellaneous, and then signed by us and by the client. So if you'd like to get an agreement just like this, unfortunately I can't like give any of these as downloads under this video because they're not mine and I didn't create them, but you can go to this website, LegalZoom. There's also like a ton of other websites just like this, and look for a sample agency agreement, and you can buy something like this for like $40 to $50, and you've got all the legal jargon, and then you can go in and add the sections that you saw within the ones that I showed you specific to your agency with all of those little tricks that I also mentioned. All right, great. Now with those couple options and examples out of the way, I'm now going to show you what we use at my agency for our current agreement, which I think is the best one we've ever used. And you'll see it's much different than the ones I just showed you. So we've got a digital marketing agreement, just kind of this picture here, nice branded, looks great. And then we were saying, this is what you're getting, Orthodontic Marketing Pro. All of these different things. Lead Flow is the name of our white labeled software. Ad copywriting and strategy, chatbot creation and customization. Again, listing out all of these things so we seem more impressive, and listing it in a place where like, this is much nicer to look at than those other ones that are just filled with legal jargon, etc. Next up, we've got the setup call schedule. Okay, these are all the calls you're gonna need to attend before you can launch. Please make sure you have Zoom downloaded. You can see this is much more about setting proper expectations than legality. Then, okay, months 2 through 3, this is what we're working on. Months 4 through 12, this is what we're working on. Planting the seed that we want to work with them for a year or longer. And then here we have the action-based guarantee. This has taken so long to get right. I'm going to go through every single part of this. So again, completion of all the below items is mandatory. Clients forfeit the right to the action-based guarantee if all items are not completed in their specified time frame. So milestones: 1, have a key staff member complete the initial OrthoPatients Academy course within 30 days and finish all assignments. Clients who do this also qualify for $200 OrthoPatients credit on their next payment. This is to encourage people to do this. Provide all of the following assets within 10 business days. Specific photos that we need from them. Video, specific video that we need from them. 3, give us the following digital access within 3 business days. Facebook page, website, practice management software, Google My Business, because we plug into all of these things in my agency. You'd probably just start out with Facebook page or just website or whatever it is you need for your company. Give us the following details for your account within 3 business days: preferred down and monthly payment chatbot options, preferred offer for your account. This is very specific to what we do. Preferred offer for your account, local area details for targeting your ads. These are quite important for anybody. Obviously, depending on what deliverables you need from the client, you'd replace them with yours here. Respond to all ortho patients' communication within 2 business days. This one's huge. Huge, guys. Definitely recommend adding that to your agreement. 6, have open availability. We require a minimum of 3 new patient consultations per day per open location designated on your schedule to be used by ortho patients only. This is so that we can actually schedule the leads that are coming in, because we had clients who were like, oh, we can't book anybody for 3 weeks. Like, okay, why did you hire us, first of all? And it doesn't look like you actually want to grow your business, because by the time 3 weeks comes around, nobody's going to want to come in. 7, update the status of each new booked appointment inside lead flow within 5 business days. 8, capture. So this is just making sure that we see the ROI reported. Capture and send an additional 5 photos per month to be used for updating ads. Ad account. Client must use an ortho patient's ad account to qualify for the guarantee. Do not sign this agreement unless you are serious about completing the above items. If this program does not produce at least the billed amount in production over 90 days, we'll run our program for free until it does. This means we don't have to get a refund. Most people who come through get an ROI, they're going to do great. If they don't, then we'll run for free for another month or something like that. Much rather run for free than give them a refund. And then this kind of just cuts down. Like, we were noticing that people were still asking for refunds. Like, their campaign did okay, but they're like, oh, can we get a refund? Like, no, you don't qualify for a refund. And just feels icky to have that conversation a few months in when you've done everything you could to help the client, and it's not right. We were exposing ourselves to too much risk. And then lastly, note, we cannot start a campaign without all of the necessary steps completed. Next, we've got all of these testimonials, and this last page, pricing and legal. Leadflow CRM, we separated this as a little hack that I learned from the HighLevel conference. So this $297 gives you an option to downsell when a client wants to leave. So let's say you're charging them $2,000 a month. You're like, hey, according to your agreement, $300 of that is lead flow, or your version of HighLevel. Let's just keep, your website widget, your Google My Business chat, these things. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch the video titled the biggest opportunity in SMMA right now, but you can downsell to that amount that you put on here. So that's what we're doing here. And then Orthodontic Marketer Pro, we put the price, and then we put the 3-month total of these 2 monthly options. And we say payment will be billed every 28 days from start date. Pay in full discount of $500 available. After the initial 12-week campaign, agreement is month to month. A 28-day written cancellation notice. Campaigns renew and bill automatically at, and then we'll fill this out without 28-day notice. Please be advised that blank is responsible. This is the company name. This is basically covers all your legal stuff for their specific area. And then I understand upon entering this agreement, ortho patients will immediately begin working on my account. Therefore, no refunds will be issued. Guys, another thing, this 28 days is one of the things that just absolutely blew my mind when I learned about it, because 28 days is actually 13 billing cycles a year. And so you're billing for 4 weeks instead of an entire month. And that adds in another billing cycle for you, which makes you more profitable. So you're welcome. Then we collect their signatures and then their payment information on this, just in case, we transfer payment processors or something. We don't have to go ask the client to sign up again. We just have their information on file, which I have heard potentially could open us up to liability, but I'm not too worried about it. And the client's aware that they're signing this, so it's not a huge deal. So there you have it, guys. A lot of really cool stuff in that agreement that you can take using your own agency. My hope is that you build an awesome agency off of what I've just shown you. That really is my goal for you. One more thing that I'll mention, you have to have a way to send this to a client and have them sign it. HelloSign has a very good free option. DocuSign is the category king if you want to use them. It's like $600 a year or something like that. Awesome information here, and I really hope that it helps you build your agency. That's my foremost hope in life, is that you actually build a company for yourself, because it's a life-changing experience. Thanks so much for tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.